What is a major escalation in the Middle East? Iran is now threatening severe punishment for Israel's unprecedented attack. Drones exploded at nuclear facilities across the country overnight. And this attack also targeted military commanders and scientists as well. There you're hearing sirens blaring in Jerusalem as Iran launched more than 100 drones toward Israel in retaliation. Israel remains under a state of emergency, and earlier Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the attack, claiming that Iran has been weaponizing nuclear materials and posing a threat.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
All right, we've got team coverage on this for you with Natalie Brand at the White House, Courtney Kealy in studio at the center of your screen. But let's begin with CBS News contributor Bob Berger in Jerusalem. Good morning to you again, Robert. Why do you think Israel chose this moment for the attack? And really, what was the scale of what took place across Iran yesterday?
A major attack by Israel, and you had 200 warplanes. Keep in mind that Iran is more than 1,000 miles or around 1,000 miles away from Israel, which means that these warplanes have to refuel in midair more than one time to just get there and also to get back. But the attack has gone extremely well from the Israeli point of view. They've killed 3 top generals in the command in Iran. They had hit the Natanz nuclear facility, which is the top enrichment facility, causing major damage according to the military. And also Mossad agents got inside Iran with drones and were able to hit some ballistic missile sites. So it's gone very well for Israel. Why now? Israel had earlier last year knocked out Iran's air defenses in previous attacks. And also the fear was that Iran was getting very close to building a nuclear bomb.
Now, it's been 12 hours plus since this attack. Israel has noted Iranian drones, some of which it's intercepted, but perhaps because of what you've just laid out, that much of Iran's leadership had been targeted in this attack, the response appears to have been muted and delayed. What should Israel expect, and what is the next step for the nation?
Right, so far, very muted. 100 drones were fired in this direction. None of them have reached Israel. They've been shot down outside of Israel. Even Jordan shot down some drones over its airspace. But Iran has to retaliate for this attack by Israel. And I think right now they're reeling from what just happened. But if we look back at last year, there were 2 major attacks by Iran on Israel. And they fired hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles. And I think we can expect something like that, if not today, in the coming days. Keep in mind, most of those drones and ballistic missiles were knocked out by the U.S. and Israel by their air and missile defenses. But if just 1 or 2 ballistic missiles gets through, it can cause major damage. They carry a 2,000-pound warhead.
Now, we'll speak more about this with our next guest, but Israel is already at war with Hamas in Gaza, which it believes is backed by Iran. It targeted Hezbollah in Lebanon. Same story there, and has been fending off missiles from Yemen. So is this considered successful as far as Israel's attempt to become more safe?
So far, it's gone very well with major damage caused in Iran. And this is not a one-off kind of event. The military has made it clear that this is just the beginning. It's going to last at least a few days, I would think, if not more, maybe a couple of weeks. The Army spokesman, Homefront Command, told Israelis to be ready for a difficult couple of weeks.
Bob Berger out of Jerusalem with the latest for us there. Robert, thank you so much. Let's jump now to the White House. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is there with more. Natalie, this morning you were talking to me about what the administration's position is. It said it had no part in this operation, but the president's multiple messages this morning does seem to suggest that he expected this would happen. Tell us more.
That's exactly right. The administration saying it was not directly involved in the operations, but a post by President Trump on Truth Social alludes to knowledge that an Israeli strike would be coming. He says that he's given Iran chance after chance to make a deal. Also notes that Israel has a lot of military equipment from the United States and that more would be coming. And then goes on to say that Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left, seeming to suggest that future further attacks would be even more brutal. Analysts, including one that you talked to this morning, Errol, says from that post, it seems like the president sees this Israeli strike against Iran as leverage. But again, he's trying to get Iran back to the negotiating table. We know that President Trump is expected to meet with his National Security Council next hour here at the White House in the Situation Room. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office is also saying that he's expecting to speak to Trump sometime today. The question is, do these talks between the U.S. and Iran over a potential nuclear deal, do they still happen in light of what we saw late last night? In another post by the president today, he said that he gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal, noting that today is 61. That kind of aligns roughly with the timeline of when the U.S. and Iranian talks began several weeks ago. But these next round of talks, what would be the sixth round of talks with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, had been previously scheduled even ahead of the strike happening last night, Errol.
All right, and we should note that we expect at the top of this hour the Israelis to potentially speak at the United Nations to give us an update on all of this. So all new information unfolding in real time, and Natalie Brand with the latest for us out of the White House. Natalie, thank you for that. At this moment, world markets are taking a bit of a hit this morning. You got oil prices jumping after the attack. You're looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average at the moment. As you see there, it's pulled back more than 600 points. Let's bring in CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady now to help us kind of connect dots between how this may and may not be connected. Kelly, great to see you. How are world oil prices reacting to this? Because that's the key commodity that can fluctuate based on conflict.
Absolutely. And, you know, whenever there is something like this that happens over in the Middle East, there are implications, economic implications for you and me right here at home. Right. So oil prices are spiking because oil is traded on a global market. It is simple economics. Go back to your college class, demand and supply. And so when you have bombs going off in the Middle East, when you have Iran being a top 10 oil producer, as many other of the Middle Eastern nations are, there is a concern about supply. And that is why you are seeing oil prices rise roughly 7 to 10% given on the minute. Things are changing very rapidly. And that is very important because go back to the summer of 2022. What happened? Gasoline prices spiked. Right? Yeah. Remember, I was out in California. It was above $9 a gallon at one point.
There were record levels everywhere.
Right. The reason is because oil was above $100 a barrel, and that was because Russia had attacked Ukraine. And that caused very similar things in the oil market as we're seeing right now. So that's really the big concern, that all of this unrest, you're going to see oil prices continue to go up. And that's going to impact everything from gas to inflation to pretty much everything that you and I buy.
And I think a barrel of Brent crude is still well below 100.
I just checked it at 74, but it was in the mid-60s.
Right,
and by the
exactly.
way, energy prices being low is what has kept inflation low these past couple of last months.
So not something that consumers need at the moment. And speaking of, you've got some new data when it comes to the sentiment of consumers, their spending habits and interests. What's fresh there?
Yes, this dropped just minutes ago. We saw a big spike in consumer sentiment. Of course, we've been talking about that a lot of late, that it has gone down because of all of the trade policy uncertainty. So people are still worried about their finances and inflation, but it is significantly better than last month. But I will highlight this, of course, does not include any survey responses from what happened last month. And geopolitical unrest often impacts how consumers feel about everything. And so this will be something to track next month.
All right, so some improvements on the sentiment side, pulling back on the energy cost side, a lot of details and data points to track. I'm glad we have you to juggle all of it. Kelly O'Grady, thanks for your time. Have a good weekend. All right, let's cross over now and bring in our Middle East reporter, Courtney Kealy. She's live for us in Studio 57 to talk about kind of the regional implications of this and what it really means. Courtney, great to have you on this topic today. What are you hearing from your sources on the ground in Iran? Because when we look at a map of the locations that Israel targeted, it's really quite widespread.
Well, last evening when these strikes started, I was speaking with somebody and they were saying, they were sending pictures immediately. There were pictures coming out. The internet was working in Iran, and this video and pictures of civilian homes, residential homes on fire, streets filled with ash and destruction from bombings. And then it became very apparent very quickly that it was widespread across all of Iran, and then that this was there was specific targeting of Iranian top military officials. So it happened in literally rapid fire, an all-out assault. And those kind of bombings, when you hear them, when you've been in them, they're terrifying. And what as Iranians are saying now is, where were the air sirens of warning? Where are the shelters? They don't have any protection like that. And they certainly are still very many people upset with this regime, worried that if the regime had made some kind of nuclear deal with the U.S., that it would have emboldened the regime and kept them in place. They're saying now the reason why the Iranian response so far has been weak is that the Iranians have been concentrating on a war against the women. We know all those protests in the last several years, all of the human rights abuses. So people do concentrate on that. There is a protest happening in Tehran that's an anti-Israel protest. Also, if we talk about the region isn't sad to see this. I mean, nobody wants civilian casualties. Nobody wants to hear that more than 72 people are killed and over 380 are wounded. That's not okay. The IAEA, Rafael Grossi, is actually cautioning about the fact that Natanz was hit. The Israelis hit Natanz. It's a well-known nuclear facility, but that could be dangerous in terms of leakage. So there are all eyes all across this while people are assessing this. We know that Israel says they'll keep going. And clearly now this morning, U.S. President Trump is allied with Israel. But you have to remember the weakening of these proxies in Lebanon, Iranians leaving Syria when Assad left, Iraq being a pro-Shia country, but not necessarily allied with the Iranian regime. So they're not going to find a lot of friends for this right now. They still ally with the Houthis, but Hamas, Hezbollah decimated. Lebanese are just still trying to recover from Hezbollah's rule. And a lot of regional players will not be sad about this. Of course, again, most importantly, civilian casualties, what's happening to the Iranian population. There's no place to hide. This is still a very tenuous, dangerous time for Iranian civilians as well.
And what's interesting about the way you lay that out, Courtney, is that if we look back at all of our conversations over the past 12 months, this Israeli action against Iran has very well been predicted. Netanyahu has signaled this is exactly what he wants to do, but this does seem to be a moment of weakness for Iran. So what's the end game?
Big question. I don't have the answer, but we're hearing, we can look at the tea leaves and we can listen to what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, and he said this is going to be ongoing. I have covered wars with Israel, and the war in 2006 against Hezbollah was intense. It wasn't that long, but it was an intense couple of weeks and a very dangerous, scary couple of weeks. Same with the operation still ongoing in Gaza. We've seen the decimation there. So we're going to have to watch and see and hear what's coming out of Iran. And I'll keep you posted, Errol, because we have been talking about this for quite a while.
Yeah, and we, of course, spare a thought for all the civilians in the region looking at this with an incredible amount of fear. Courtney Kealy, with that great perspective, thanks so much.